And we're back on my birthday, like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of this Sunday, some of my birthday, with me here in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Yes, alas, it has been another trip around the sun, as they say, 365 days, according to calculations. I have been on this planet for more than 18,600 days. You start saying it that way, and it's a little bit freaky, a little crazy. But on the other hand, Richard Nixon was still president when I was born. So from that perspective, maybe you'd think that I was around even longer than I've actually been around. But honestly, I don't feel that much different on this birthday. It's not a milestone birthday. And for very young people, let's say people half my age or perhaps even less than half my age, and I'm not trying to be funny when I say that, but the only birthdays that really meant something, or that at least from a psychological perspective mattered, turning 20 bothered me a little bit, because it meant that I really was no longer a kid. And the weird part with that is I didn't really act like a kid when I was a kid. Not that I was necessarily so mature, but I didn't do a lot of kid-like things. I had more adult interests, and I was just a pain in the ass. You know, I didn't hang out. I didn't have a clique that I ran with when I was in my late teens. But turning 20, I guess it kind of focused me a little bit. I said, all right, I guess I got to get a little bit more serious, and I kind of did, because I ended up going to NYU before my 21st birthday. Maybe there was a connection. I started taking things more seriously. And the other birthday that really got to me was turning 30. And, it's not even, again, trying to be funny, but I turned 30 a really long time ago. Not everybody's good at math, but if you were born on the December 29 in which I turned 30, you are now old enough to order a drink on your own. Yeah. So without me giving you the actual number of how old I am, I just told you literally how old I am. 15, but not necessarily in that order. It is true, though, that when you get to to be my age, or when you get really into where you have seen a lot, you've absorbed a lot more failure and disappointment than maybe you expected to, when you have achieved highs that maybe you didn't expect to. I don't see years as, was this a good year or was this a bad year? I feel like that, and you see stuff along these lines on social media, and I agree with the idea. I don't agree with everything I see on social media, but it's not always a question of, did you achieve your objectives in a given year? Whatever it was that you were trying to do, for example, going into 2024, sometimes it's enough to say that you're still standing upright. And the truth is, if you ask me a question, I hadn't really put it together like this, and you can play this kind of mental game with yourself, because there's no real right answer. This is your thoughts, your feelings. What is your takeaway based on your year? And you can use this for the end of the year, because in my case, my birthday happens to be 2 days before the last day of the year. But if you're asked the question, what is the last calendar year, 2002, like calendar year, literally, what is the last calendar year that you can look back on and just say, on balance, it was a good year? For me, I've got to go back to 2019. And I didn't realize how good of a year 2019 was until I was doing this little mental gymnastics game with myself. And I said, you know what? 2019 was a pretty good year. And then you move forward, and unfortunately, 2020 was not really that great of a year for too many people. I can't imagine how it could be a great year. We all know what happened, and hopefully nobody watching or listening to this lost anybody in 2020. But 2020 was okay for me. But 2021 was mostly bad. My dad went downhill physically, health-wise, and then 2022 he passed. The last part of 2022 was very good. The first part of 2023 was very good. And then things just spiraled on me, really spiraled on me. And 2023 ended okay. 2024 started okay. But there's about a 6-month stretch of 2024, it was not good. And that's not blaming outside forces. Sometimes you just make stupid mistakes, or there are actions that you should have taken and you didn't. What I'm telling you is, just because you reach a certain age or a certain level of experience, it doesn't mean that you're not going to screw up. You never stop learning. You never stop making mistakes. And it is very important, and this is another one of the kind of a thing you might see in meme form. Learning how to forgive yourself is a big part of maturity, and I believe that wholeheartedly. But I also think it's okay to look back on years and say, well, when were we doing good versus when were we doing bad? And is there any commonality? Are there common threads? Can we say what went wrong? And if you can point to something that, let's say, you should have done and didn't do as being a reason why the year didn't go the way that you would have liked it to, well, try to do better next time. Ask that question that you should have asked. Double check to make sure that a certain bill got paid, as in the case with me, the ridiculous insurance snafu, which inadvertently signaled the end of the Lexus that I was driving because I panicked when your insurance apparently was expired and your registration got suspended, and then suddenly I've got 8 tickets in one. Well, it turned out that none of those stuck. But at the time, I thought, oh my God, I got 8 tickets. I'm going to prison. Again, even at my 50 years old at the time, I'm just going way, way ahead of myself. And in that instance, for some of you who may have watched or listened to the episode, it was one of the probably funniest episodes I've ever done. It was called My Day in Court, and everything turned out okay because there were a series of mistakes made on the other end, and not a single charge, if you want to use the word charge. It was just a stupid slip up. Everything was thrown out. So for all of my panicking, if I had simply done no panicking and shown up in court, the same thing would have happened. I said, no, you shouldn't have been charged with anything. This was not even your problem. Sorry. One of those. To be more specific, though, because I can tell you, as a younger person, I was always afraid of aging. Even as a boy, I would see an older person, and there's levels of older, but I thought that 50 meant that you're pretty much being put out to pasture, that you've already outlived your best days, your best years, and it was just a matter of hanging on. I mean, it's almost ridiculous. If you took me at age 8 and stuck him in a room with me now, the little kid that I was, that irritating, redheaded, with the mop of the hair and always with a big mouth. It's funny that how many different teachers said you had a mouth on you. Yeah, did I? I guess so. But it would be an eye-opening experience for younger me to understand and actually maybe learn something rather than what's just inferred. That people who are a lot older than me are old. And, well, I don't necessarily agree that you're only as old as you feel. I think that that's a little bit of a Hallmark fantasy. I think that you get to a certain point, and there are a lot of things that are going to hurt. And these jokes that people used to say, I have aches and pains I didn't even know existed, when I was a kid. Unfortunately, that might actually be the case. It's not something that needs to be feared, though. It's just something that you have to kind of deal with on a day-to-day basis, that things crop up. I never imagined that I would have arthritis, but I got this fat knuckle on my right hand. My right pinky knuckle is about twice its size that it used to be a couple of years ago. Well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to, try not to make it any worse, but that's difficult. And then you start having conversations with yourself, like, how much do I have to adjust the way that I work out based on the current reality of what hurts and what doesn't hurt? Now, these are things that are not necessarily pleasant. but it's a reality because, the human body was built to last a long time, but it was not built to last forever. So these are questions that I would say that I successfully kind of parried with my interior voice over time. I haven't trained like a lunatic since I was 37 years old and began injuring every single body part, everything, doing exactly what I had been doing as far as intensity, weight, form. And my body was basically saying, bro, you're not a kid anymore. At 37, you're not a kid anymore. You can't do this. You have to work around it. And that is also an unfortunate reality. Not everybody deals with it at the same time. Sometimes you just have a bad genetic draw. In my case, I just abused myself from a training perspective for too long, doing crazy daredevil shit. So, some people who follow me know that I do a lot of reps. I do high reps with different exercises, but I'm doing it almost from a therapeutic angle and trying to preserve myself, because if you're doing, for example, if you're doing shoulders and you're using dumbbells light enough to get 100 reps on a main set, weight's not heavy enough for you to get injured. Even if you have something weird like a knuckle which is twice its normal size and you really don't want to do anything to agitate it any more than just working out in general, you just have to figure out a way to do what you can. You don't take it easy. This is not a question of motivation, but unfortunately in many people, and it's not just me, I'm sure that if you're into fitness, you can identify, or people where you ask the question, say, what are they doing? Why would you, for example, I knew a guy, this is going way back, probably 25 years, well into the 90s. And this was somebody who had issues with their knees, were very, very sore. Now, if you have sore knees, or let's just say you have a strange sensation in your arm or your elbow is aching, these things are not necessarily because of age. It could be, it could have something to do with it. But when you have certain warning signs, you have to take heed. And as much as nobody wants to admit that there will come a point in time where you will never deadlift 500 pounds again, or 400 pounds again, or you'll never squat 300 pounds again, or you'll never bench press 300 pounds again. The instinct is to push back against that. The instinct is to say, this is not okay. I'm not that old. I'm not that injured. But ending up in the hospital needing emergency surgery, I can tell you from experience, that's not the way to go either. Now, there are going to be times, unfortunately, where you can do everything right and still hurt yourself. It's less likely. It's a lot less likely. And this is where you have to be your own best judge, and you have to be willing to not get angry. It's kind of like when you're under the weather and you force yourself to work out, like me when I gave myself pneumonia in 2005 because I refused to take a day off from working out because I was that obsessed. And I end up with a trickle in the lungs that gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I end up in the emergency room with a doctor looking at me and saying, he's all but coming out and saying, I can tell you're intelligent. Why did you let this happen? So that is part of getting older and maybe gaining a little bit of maturity as we get older. I got a lot of things right as far as adjusting my training, but unfortunately you still deal with, I have pain in a lot of different areas that I did not have if we go back 15 years. And some of the crazy stuff that I've even posted to social media where say, geez, how the hell did he do that? I don't know. I just did it. But damage was being accrued. You say to yourself, oh, well, I'll just recover between workouts. Yeah, you can recover between workouts, but that doesn't mean that lasting damage has not taken place. That if you are not careful, or even if you are careful, you can still log permanent damage to your joints, tendons, ligaments. Then the best you can do is not really fuck yourself up. Because I don't care who you are. Nobody needs to go in for surgery. well, you need to go in for surgery if you pop something. But that it is not that important to show that you can still lift a certain amount of weight at a certain time. Oh, I just turned 50 and I'm going to deadlift 500 or I'm going to die trying. Well, that's on you. I wouldn't recommend that for anyone. And I might get hurt pulling 200. I might end up, collapsing. It's very unlikely because obviously I can handle that kind of weight. But even right now, if you told me that with, let's say, 10 minutes of warm-ups, could I pull 315? Yeah. I have the strength to pull 315. Can I guarantee that I'm not going to end up on the floor or the platform in a heap? No. Would I ever do it just for no reason? No chance. Because each time I have built up to say, well, can I rebuild, my deadlift to what it used to be? There's always a warning sign. And this is something that it did scare me as a younger person, but it doesn't now. It's just a part of life. And I just don't want to get hurt. The most important thing, in the immortal words of the great filmmaker Stanley Donen, you got to show up. That's the most important thing, because almost everybody has the will, for example, to exercise, to want to give your best effort. But if you're in the hospital because you didn't pay attention to the pain in your knee or the pain in your elbow, and you kept trying to push more weight, more reps, I'm just going to ignore it, I'll just wrap it tighter, you can't work out when you have certain kinds of injuries. You're going to need to recover. Your body needs to heal as much as possible. It's never going to go back to 100%, go back to what used to be baseline when you were in your 30s and maybe even in your 40s. You have to allow for it. You can't fight against Father Time. And we're not professional athletes. We're just, at least in my case, just a regular person who, works out, try to achieve a certain look, try to have a certain level of fitness for, when you go to the doctor, it's not really that much of a feather in your cap, but when the doctor basically looks at you and does all of your numbers, now that I've got my thyroid under control, and the doctor says, you're doing pretty well, Mr. Cohen. You're in pretty good shape. You don't smoke, you don't drink, you take care, you work out every day, your lungs look good, everything, there were no remnants. When I had pneumonia, they told me there was a chance that I might end up with permanent scarring of the lungs, which could have impacted my life expectancy and things of that nature, but I seem to have survived that, as dumb as I was to allow that to happen way back when. But moving away from fitness, I feel pretty good on this birthday. And even if 2024 has been a trying year, hey, every year is going to have ups and downs, no matter who you are, no matter what age you are. It's not smooth sailing. It's rough for everybody. In the immortal words of, Hustle and Flow. It's hard out here for a pimp. Well, not a pimp, but it's hard out here for anybody. The joke is no one gets out of here alive, but I defy any of you to say that every month of 2024 was a great month. If that's the case, God bless. That is fucking awesome. I would say that 4 months of the year were pretty good for me. The other ones, not so much. But here's the other thing. I didn't throw in the towel at any point. I despaired. I thought, oh my God, I'm screwed. But usually that's just our brain playing tricks on us in much the same way as our brain could say, Jerry, you could still pull 400. Fuck this bullshit. Now, this is one of the kind of weird things with going to a gym as great as Bev's, where it can almost be a detriment. Because I got to tell you, I'm going back and I'm looking at some of the stuff I was doing as late as, let's say, 2018. I was taking my life into my hands because I was training around people who were there lifting real good, and they are blasting away and pulling 400 and pulling 450. And I couldn't help myself. I got to get back to it. And oops, hurt my hip a little bit, lower back strain. Where's my chiropractor? Where's my dad's buddy, my guy Alan? You're going to have to adjust me. When it's just me and the iron, and I'm not being influenced by, well, this guy is half my size, I can't let him pull. Even at age 44, 45, I was still doing that. That's not good. You can't keep up with the Joneses. This is not healthy. Well, I like to think that I'm not only more enlightened now, I am I just have too many different things that I need to worry about. I'm not going to take any crazy risks. But if you ask yourself, as this year comes to a close, what could you do better next year? In my case, most obvious, ask more questions. Because in 2023, I nearly sank myself by not asking questions that I knew I needed to ask because I didn't want to ruffle feathers. I made a couple of the same mistakes in 2024. I should have made sure that I was getting the appropriate emails from the insurance company so that my fucking insurance didn't expire. I mean, this is all elementary. This is nursery school level stuff. And here I was at 50 making a mistake like that. So I resolve to ask more questions in the next 365 days. Don't leave anything unturned. Turn over all of those stones. Don't assume. Ask. It's okay. I'd like to go to the movies more. I really haven't been going to the movies at all, even if I go only once every couple of months. There were stretches of my life, ironically, the time that I went to the movies the most was when I was in film school. I used to go at least once a week while I was watching movies in school, while I was writing about movies and studying them and all of that. Kind of get out of the habit. And I have movie theaters all around me here. It's not like it would be difficult. There's one near Stony Brook, which is maybe a 10-minute drive from me. I don't know that I've even been to the movies in the last year. I think the last movie I saw was Iron Claw, with Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich. I almost said Kerry. Boy, that was a really bruising movie. I've seen it 3 times, though. Very, very well done. With all of this stuff that I've said, though, I am really lucky, and I maintain that I have what we call unearned good fortune. I've gotten a lot of lucky breaks, and I've done just enough when disaster has been on the doorstep. I've done just enough to avoid. From a physical sense, the fact that I haven't been more banged up than I am, but also just a sense, if you want to say financial, if you want to say real estate, the disaster that almost took place when I attempted to sell one house while closing on another. I've gotten breaks. But there have been moments where it appeared that, okay, I really am fucked. I'm not just being negative here. Fortune ended up shining on me. But I have had less help here. There are plenty of people, and maybe you're in this category, in this group. I hope you are. There are plenty of people that before they get out of their 20s are not only have to rely on themselves almost entirely, but have done so and have succeeded without anyone at their back holding them up when they're about to topple over. As I've had my whole life, the first 46, 47, and 48 years of my life, I always had somebody helping me stand upright when I was about to fall. For anybody who has been able to not only survive, but thrive, that's incredible. And when I say that, I'm being entirely serious because I know how difficult shit can get. Bills start piling up when you have normal person worries. Bills start piling up. You might have family members who need your help, who need care and attention. It could be a parent. It could be both parents. It could be a younger sibling, an older sibling. It could be anything. To be able to surmount obstacles without having somebody pushing you to the finish line. It's pretty awesome. And I was able to go most of my adult life and I was never really backed up against a wall. Now, ironically, in my next year, the year between ages 51 and 52, I hope to never be backed up against a wall again. I hope to be able to take the steps for myself that I'm able to avoid it. Because, yeah, it certainly builds character, but you don't want to get into a habit of needing a miracle or having to dig yourself out from a ditch, metaphorically speaking. You really don't want to do that. I'm through building character, as they say. I'm ready to just go day to day and get the most out of every day that I possibly can. I'm like anyone else. When things go wrong, I get down. When I was younger, I spent a lot of time in therapy, and I was also fortunate that each therapist that I saw, starting when I was age 12, they all cared. Nobody seemed to be just collecting, the $100 or whatever it might have been at the time for a 50-minute hour. They all gave me really good advice. They all gave me good exercises to try if I was struggling, that I was having difficulty interacting. From a certain point of view, my life is ridiculous, but from another point of view, you say, well, no, there's a lot of success here. This guy couldn't even look people in the eye until he was in his late 30s, for crying out loud. Now, he's looking right into the camera here, right? It's all about perspective. And so much of life is not about the actual events that transpire. It's how we react to them. Do we allow certain events to destroy us, or do we always look for a way to go around, to go through obstacles? And that's something that I understand now better than I ever have. Because younger me, even well into my 40s, when things went wrong, my instinct was to turn around and look for help. You understand the life lesson. You can only rely on yourself. There isn't always going to be somebody to help. If you get thrown into deep water, what are you going to do? Are you going to be able to swim, or are you going to sink? For most of my life, I was somebody who right to the bottom. And then suddenly, I started to get the ability to level, come back up to the surface. Didn't happen overnight. Change, even negative change, like in 2019, my right pinky was normal size. Slowly, some things go wrong, and slowly, some things, hopefully more, go right. You just have to keep your nose to the grindstone, as they say. Keep working. Don't be afraid to get older. Be thankful that you've reached a point where you start having aches and pains that didn't exist before. It's not a good thing, but it means you've had some experience. You've lived. You have not been in a vacuum somewhere collecting data and not having any real world experiences. Get out there, mix it up. These are all things that are so obvious, but if you had asked me when I was 35, I would say, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. It's all bullshit. No, it's not. Me at age 8, me at 21, me at 35, I wouldn't be saying anything like I'm saying right now. This is decades now of real world experience, at least 15 years, that I didn't think I was going to have, and I've had. And I'm very grateful. But at the same time, we don't rest on our laurels, right? We just keep pushing forward. Get the most out of every day. Meet new people. Try new foods. Try new drinks. But don't stop nothing, as Rocky Balboa would say. Don't stop nothing. Don't be afraid of a ticking clock. We don't have unlimited time here. That's true. But you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be scared, and you don't have to be depressed about it. Because we all have down days. It's not permanent unless you make it permanent. The next horizon, the next sunrise, is always just around the corner. And that's how I'm feeling on the day of my 51st birthday. I was born December 29th, 1973. My dad, the CPA, Alan, you got a tax deduction. I heard that an awful lot when I was a kid. Oh, your dad got a tax deduction. That's funny, and he's an accountant. Yeah, I heard that a lot. 51 today. And as always, grateful. Super grateful to be here and to be able to interact with all of you out there and hopefully spread a little bit of good cheer, a little bit of kindness, hopefully a little bit of interesting information, maybe a perspective that you hadn't thought of. But yeah, 51 years old today. And hopefully this will be my best year ever. But if it isn't, well, we'll just have to see, right? And that's life. We don't know what's going to happen until it happens. This has been episode 393 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of my birthday with me here in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Till then, peace.